back to another episode of Cavanaugh's Corner. I'm Andrew Cavanaugh. I want to say thank you for coming back to the channel. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about Dunkirk, the new film from Christopher Nolan. It's been a few years in the making, but I just saw it recently, and I really wanted to talk to you about it. So, Dunkirk is a World War II film, basically based on the events around the evacuation of the British and French troops from the beaches of Dunkirk. It was a colossal military failure, but the survival of the men that they got off of those beaches basically ensured the success of World War II. So it's kind of a successful failure kind of mission. But Nolan takes what would have otherwise been a fairly downbeat, uninteresting war film and makes it a masterwork of suspense, editing, and even cinematography. I mean, this movie is incredible. Dunkirk is not a film for the faint of heart. It is not a gory film. It actually is PG-13, but it is very, very intense. There's a lot of scenes where there's impending danger, and you can kind of almost smell disaster around every corner in this film. And I think that was the feeling that Nolan kind of wanted to put into the audience in this movie, is that something terrible is going to happen very, very shortly around every couple minutes. And he really pulled it off in this. He really ramped up the suspense in this film, even more so than most of his other movies. He really did a great job of letting you know that these men that were on this, that were in Dunkirk at the time, were really in danger. It's definitely a war film, but it is not an action film. And that was something I wanted to make clear. Much like War for the Planet of the Apes, this movie is a war film, but not an action film. This is not meant to display guys shooting at each other and stuff like most war films do. This movie is more about survival. And it is really, I think Nolan made this to really display the horrors of war and what war does to a person. And just how, sometimes war isn't about, winning a battle or, killing the guy that's shooting at you. Although that is in this movie. There are actually some spectacular dogfight sequences featuring Tom Hardy. But it really is meant to display the horrors of war, not to show, two guys killing each other. It's much more about survival and what a man will go through just to try to survive. It's pretty intense. I personally felt a very emotional connection to a lot of the characters in this movie, especially the innocent civilians that sailed into Dunkirk to rescue these men. I think those characters were the guys I felt more connected to more than anybody. I rooted a lot for Tom Hardy and for the poor guys that were stranded on the beach, but I felt a very distinct connection to everybody in the film, that I just want to see these guys survive. I just want to see these guys live. And, the civilians that put their lives in danger are real heroes here, and that was, I think, one of the other purposes of making this movie. I think Nolan wanted to show that even a regular Joe like you and me can be a hero in certain senses, and the film really displays that well. I really like that. The crazy thing is about this movie is there's not a lot of dialogue in this movie. There's a lot of, prolonged scenes where nobody says anything, and if anything's said, it's very minor and situational, and that's really crazy. It's pretty wild that Nolan made a whole, feature-length film where characters very rarely speak to each other in terms of expositional dialogue. It's probably maybe a minute and a half of that in this whole movie. It's very, very rare, and most of that is delivered by Kenneth Branagh. And he really does a great job in this film as one of the higher-ranking officials. He's very, very good. And again, he's kind of a smaller part, but even his performance, I really felt for the guy, because you can tell he gave a shit about the men that were stranded on the beach. You got a sense of, I got to get these guys out of here. And, he was very connected to what, his end goal was, to just getting these guys to safety. And again, I really felt it. I really felt it. And you barely know anybody's name in this movie. That to me is a major achievement when I can actually say I gave a crap about characters that didn't even really get introduced. And if they did, I probably missed it. They did a really good job with that. I think also, honestly, this is probably one of the best shot war films I've ever seen in my lifetime. The director of photography that did this movie also did Spectre. He did Interstellar with Nolan earlier. He's a very good cinematographer. I cannot remember his name. I'll put it in a little credit here. But he is a phenomenal director of cinematography. And I will say, he brought it home in this thing, man. The entire movie, except for the opening credits, is in IMAX, which is amazing. And I saw it in IMAX. If you're going to see this movie, you have to see it in the IMAX. It really does immerse you into the film. The sound design of this movie is also incredible. The entire theater was shaking during some of the scenes in the film that displayed, the planes dive bombing the men on the beach, the dog fights, really some amazing sound design. It was just a very immersive film, and actually some of the times the sound in it was pretty intense. Actually, the opening scene, there are some gunshots that kind of come out of nowhere, and it scared the living shit out of me. I almost dropped my drink that I bought. That would have been a disaster. It's a big damn drink. I almost dropped that thing and spilled it everywhere. Thankfully, I didn't. I came real close, though. But yeah, the gunshots you hear in this movie are pretty much the real deal, and I thought that was outstanding. Hans Zimmer's score also in this movie is wild. I think they basically based the entire score around a ticking clock, and this style of the score is this rising scale, and every time something intense is going to happen, that ticking clock starts to ramp up. And it almost works like the Jaws theme, where you start hearing that ticking, you know something's about to happen. And it really intensified the film to a point where I was getting heart palpitations during certain scenes. It is really that intense. I was really on the edge of my seat through most of the film, and Hans Zimmer's score really helped that. That was a big one. The biggest point of contention I've heard about this film is the way the film is edited. Now, Nolan did this very purposefully. The way the film is edited is, in my mind, a work of genius. The way that he did it was he put each character on their own temporal plane, meaning that the movie plays out in different time frames, but they're all cut together and they all kind of run into each other at the end. It's pretty brilliant. I'm not spoiling anything by telling you this, because they kind of make it clear with even credits and stuff near the beginning of the film, but the men on the beach spent about a week there. The guys in the boats spent a few days on the boats getting to Dunkirk, I should say. And the pilots piloting the Spitfire jets were basically in the air for like an hour. So you have all these guys doing their thing in their own time frame. However, instead of showing it in real time, Nolan cuts everything together, meaning that at one moment you'll be spending some time with the guys on the beach, the next you'll be seeing the civilians getting into their boat, and then the next you'll see the guys in the jet fighters, in the Spitfire planes, I should say, flying to Dunkirk. Now, I heard this was a confusing thing. I didn't find it confusing at all. Maybe it's because I'm used to Nolan's style of editing, but I really found it intriguing to watch this way. And it also kept your mind active, so you didn't go on autopilot during this movie, where at times near the end of the film, you're actually seeing the same event through different perspectives, and I really love it when that happens. And Nolan, again, being the master of messing with time, he has yet again done a wonderful job of keeping the film very concise, because honestly, if he played it out in real time, the movie would probably be like a 3.5 hour bore fest. I'm going to be honest. I'm sure it would still be very intriguing to watch, but it would be like mini-series length. And I'm glad that Nolan cut it the way that he did, because he turned it into an hour and 46 minutes of just pure, non-stop tension. And I love that. I love the way he did that. And, I mean, really, in the end, this movie is just another masterpiece by Nolan. I mean, Dunkirk is really the reason why I go to the movies. I mean, by the end of it, I was scared, I was enthralled, I was excited, I was saddened, and I left the theater with a sense of purpose and inspiration. I felt like I had watched something that was destined to be a classic. And I honestly think that it is. My rating for this movie is going to be a 5 out of 5. Yes, another 5 out of 5. This has been a really good summer for movies so far. If you enjoyed my review, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more reviews like this. Until next time, I'm Andrew Cavanaugh. I want to say thank you for coming back to Cavanaugh's Corner. Take it easy.